What's poppin', y'all? For some reason, Eminem just keeps getting strays, and he's one of the rappers that literally just minds his business. So Dr. Umar, who is elite tier funny. I mean, he's one of the funniest people on the internet unintentionally, and he's probably in the wrong career path since I think he would make a ton more as a comedian. Like, if Dr. Umar was like, yo, I'm throwing a comedy show on, I don't know, next week, and it's in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, I think he's selling the place out. And then you got Charleston White opener. I think that would go crazy. But I think what makes him funnier is that he's not touting himself as a comedian. But the interesting thing about Dr. Umar is that he's very effective at convincing people. He's very good at arguing, and he will drop points that are factual, but then he'll say like some absurd stuff too, or he'll start with something absurd and then walk you down a path of reason and logic where you're like, huh, that kind of makes sense, which is something I tend to do sometimes, but not with the same subject matter as Dr. Umar. But let me not start yapping too much. That's for other videos. He's on Joe Budden's podcast. The topic of Eminem comes up, or the topic of Eminem comes up, which respect to Joe Budden, because even he was not hating. Let me take that back. Walk that back. Joe Budden was saying that Eminem, it wasn't Kamikaze. That wasn't the project. It was a project before that, like the American flag. He was saying it was whack. It was trash. And he gives criticism to Eminem when it's due. And he doesn't deride, some people will say, but when it's garbage, he says it's garbage. But he has a ton of respect for Eminem as an MC and as a rapper, and he touts him as one of the best, if not the best, skill-wise. And Joe Budden is a very skilled rapper. So what does Dr. Umar do? He comes in, he's like, oh no, this is an African thing. Also, this is the interesting thing about Dr. Umar. Hip-hop is not an African thing. It's an African-American thing. And I guess I will say Tariq Nasheed's term, FBA, makes a lot more sense because a Kenyan is not hip-hop. You know, maybe if they grew up in the States, it's different because like race is looked at more in the States versus other countries where nationality matters more. So someone from Botswana, that has nothing to do with hip-hop. So it was originally a regional thing, and it was an African-American thing, not just an African thing. But he says, oh, how can a white person be the best at anything that's African? And I think this is such a tired thing, and people still agree with it. Now, the first example that people will give is sports examples, right? For instance, basketball, right? James Naismith, I believe he was Canadian, white guy, invented basketball, came up with it. The best basketball players are black. Now, are you going to say, oh no, they can't be the best because they're black? No. Or they're not white? No. Now, someone will come back and say, well, you know, that's an objective thing because you can measure stats and points scored and rebounds and steals, and you can objectively see that someone is better than another. Then why is the player that has the best stats not necessarily considered the best all the time or the best ring? So there's still nuance in a basketball or a sports conversation. But I will concede the point that it is rather objective, like who's good is good. However, let's just take it back to music then. What about piano? What about other instruments, right, that a black person might be considered the best? Like, for example, like let's say saxophone or trombone or trumpet. These were invented by white people. This is a subjective thing, right? It's music. So if they were invented by white people, are you allowed to say that a black person is the best saxophone player or a black person is the best electric guitar player? Like a lot of people were saying that. Whoa, I almost forgot Jimi Hendrix's name. That escaped my mind very quickly, but I caught it. And we're leaving the pause in there just so you know how quickly I caught that. I'm on point with this. So Jimi Hendrix, a lot of people were saying that he's like the greatest guitarist or electric guitarist alive at the time. I don't know if people still carry that on. I'm not a guitarist. If you are, let me know. Who do people think the best electric guitarist is? Is that still a thing with Jimi Hendrix as like the top spot? And I don't think people would argue with that. So I think this point is kind of whack. And the thing is, Eminem really helped hip-hop go global. Now, keep in mind, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Death Row, I would say, did a ton to globalize hip-hop. Biggie, I think, after he died, he spread worldwide, but I would say Pac is way bigger than Biggie, globally speaking. And then after that, if we look at New York rappers, it was 50 Cent. That was the most global. But I would say West Coast, Wu-Tang Clan too. I would say, yeah, Wu-Tang Clan from the East. I would say they kind of helped globalize it. But Eminem just took it to all corners of the earth. And Eminem was really skilled. So to say that Eminem is one of the best rappers or arguably the best rapper, I'm not going to argue with that person. And I think to do it based on like the way someone looks is just kind of whack, especially with someone like Eminem that takes the utmost care to make sure that he respects the genre, doesn't disrespect the OGs, shows a ton of respect for the OGs. Didn't he name like 150 people when he got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So for him to even catch strays, I think I wouldn't say it's disrespectful, because I don't think Dr. Umar means disrespect by it, despite how funny it is when he just talks about white people. I think it's hilarious. But I respect Joe Budden for coming out to defend someone whose skill, and when we talk about whose skill he respects, and when we talk about skill level, you can measure it when it comes to rapping ability and lyricism and wordplay and stanzas, and you just break down rhyme schemes. It's an objective art in that regard. Now, if you're talking about the quote-unquote quality of the music and you get into this subjective argument, now you're just running in circles, and you're just going to argue back and forth with people who may not like him for other reasons, or they might not even enjoy his music. And that's just not a fun argument to have, because nobody's going to get anywhere. But the objectivity is, Eminem is up there, and it doesn't matter that he's white. Hell, he could have been Chinese, and you'd still agree. Now, if he was Chinese or Indian, would he have blown up in the U.S.? No, definitely not, especially not back then. It's just the nature of the game. Some people have advantages, some have disadvantages. If you're white, I think you can go further in hip-hop, but I do think the barrier to entry is far, far higher to blow up. You can't even name like 10 white rappers off the top of your head. It would be a pretty tall order, especially 10 that went platinum. That's a completely different story too. Platinum albums, not platinum singles. Meanwhile, you can name a ton of black artists that have, which is pretty normal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people are tired of this conversation happening, and I personally find it entertaining. I don't think it's a conversation that's going to go anywhere. If it hasn't gone anywhere in like 30 plus years, hell, I mean, hip hop's been a thing for 50 years, but we would say like the first white rapper that really took over was Eminem, and that's late 90s. So it's probably been 20 plus years, almost 25 if we were talking 1999. And the conversation is still happening. It's going to continue to happen. The only problem is that since Eminem, there hasn't been a white rapper that has matched up in terms of skill, commercial success, and like widespread acclaim that can match up to Eminem. And I'm not saying in the same way like rap like Eminem, but compete with the other best rappers that aren't white in the game. Hell, I think even Nav is... I don't think Nav has gone further than other white rappers. I would say MGK. Did MGK's go as far in rap as Nav did? That's a good question. I don't think so. I'm willing to say no on that. I think Nav went further than him. Other white rappers, I mean, you have like Paul Walls and stuff like that, but I think Nav probably had more hits than him. Vanilla Ice, we're not going to count. Like, we're talking about skill here, right? So yeah, this is an argument that's going to continue to happen, and at least the positive part is they're only going to keep mentioning Eminem because there hasn't been another one. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Do you have any rebuttals for this, or do you agree with Dr. Umar, and why? Like, give me a logical argument that also addresses the point that I made when it comes to instruments, like piano, saxophone, etc. Like, if something was created by a white person, can a black person not be the best at it? If you agree with Dr. Umar, I'd like that question answered. And hopefully an interesting rebuttal for those that disagree. I just like to hear people's perspectives on this type of thing. I don't really have a dog in either race. Let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching, and for anybody that made it this far, I hope you have an amazing day. Make sure to call your mom if you still have her. Let her know you love her. And if you didn't make it this far, I hope you don't have an amazing day. Yeah, I said it. But yeah, y'all take care. I'm just having too much fun with this. Peace.